We are diving straight into a fascinating paper today, one that directly connects advanced AI like LLMs to the politics of polarization.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's called Polarization by Design: How Elites Could Shape Mass Preferences as AI Reduces Persuasion Costs. And it's by Nadov Kunievsky.
And the core insight is, well, it's both simple and kind of chilling.
Right.
AI is making mass persuasion incredibly cheap. And because of that, public opinion stops being this fixed thing that political elites have to work around.
It becomes something they can actually build, something they can control.
Exactly. It becomes a strategic objective.
And the model shows that this completely flips the script on how governance works. Like if you have a single ruling party, a single elite, the model says they actually have a strong incentive to push society towards maximum polarization.
To a perfect 50-50 split.
A 50-50 split. Why?
Because that division where tip goes to one half, it's like a strategic insurance policy against the future. It's the cheapest state to be in if you want to stay flexible.
But then it gets even more complicated when you throw in a rival, right?
When you have two elites who switch power, a new incentive pops up. Lock in. You might actually push for more social cohesion just to stop your rival from easily undoing everything you've done.
Until the tech gets so cheap that none of that matters, and it all just snaps right back to that 50-50 knife's edge.
Yep. The big takeaway is that AI makes polarization a tool. It's not just some unfortunate byproduct of society, it's an optimal strategy.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with that core tension.
Sure.
For any democratic policy to work, you need public support. You need a majority. And for decades, centuries, shifting public opinion was really slow and expensive.
Incredibly expensive. I mean, think about the tools they had in the 20th century.
Right.
You're talking about mass media, like national TV broadcasts, changing school books, these really blunt, slow instruments.
Things that took years or even generations to have an effect.
Exactly. And that high cost was like a natural break on the system. It meant elites mostly had to react to public opinion.
They had to take it as a given.
But this AI disruption, it just changes the whole game. You have generative models that can spit out thousands of personalized ads, little narratives.
Test them in real time.
And test them and then micro-target them. The marginal cost of persuading one more person or 1,000 more people just plummets towards zero.
So public opinion, which was this solid wall, it suddenly becomes more like clay, a variable that elites can shape to get their majority.
A choice variable.
Before we get into the strategy, though, how exactly is the paper defining polarization? Because that term can mean a lot of things.
That's a great question. In the model, it's really functional. It's just the distance from total consensus.
Okay.
So if everyone agrees P equals 1, polarization is 0. If society is split right down the middle, 50-50, that's maximum polarization.
So it maps directly to statistical variance. Maximum variance is right in the middle.
You got it. And the elite's goal is to get their policy passed while spending as little as possible to shape that opinion. And the cost of that shaping is, it's crucial. It's a convex cost function.
Convex meaning what exactly?
It means the first few minds you change are cheap. The people on the fence. Shifting from 50% support to 51%, that's easy.
But going from 80 to 90.
That costs a fortune. You're fighting against deeply held beliefs. So the more you want to shift society, the more exponentially expensive it gets.
Okay, let's hold on to that idea of convex cost. That really sets the table for the main finding here, the single elite case.
Right. So you have one elite, they're forward-looking, and they know their ideal policy might have to change next year because of, some external shock.
So they need to stay flexible.
They need flexibility, and that's where this polarization pull comes from. The model shows that whenever this elite intervenes to shape opinion, they are always pushing society towards that 50-50 split.
This is the part that feels so counterintuitive. I mean, if you're in power, why would you want society to be maximally divided? Wouldn't you want, say, 80% support? A solid mandate.
You would think so, but it all comes down to minimizing future costs. It's an insurance mechanism.
An insurance mechanism. How so?
Okay, so say you have 80% support today, but next year the world changes and your ideal policy flips completely.
Right.
Now you have to persuade a massive chunk of the population, over 30%, just to get back across that majority line. You're hitting the steepest part of that convex cost curve. It's incredibly expensive.
So by creating a supermajority, you've actually just locked yourself into a really expensive position for the future.
Precisely. But what if you kept public opinion at, say, 52%? If your ideal policy flips, you only need to nudge opinion by a tiny amount, maybe 3 or 4%, to get your new policy through. That cost is minimal.
So high polarization, that knife-edge 50-50 state, isn't about loving division. It's about keeping your options open at the lowest possible price.
Right. It's the most liquid asset you can have in the political marketplace.
Okay, I hear you on the mechanism, but let me push on that a little.
Yeah.
Doesn't that level of polarization just lead to total gridlock? I mean, instability, maybe even violence. Doesn't that make it impossible to govern at all?
That is the absolute critical distinction to make. In this model, the elite is optimizing for one thing, their dynamic payoff.
Which is just getting their preferred policy enacted.
Exactly. They are not optimizing for social cohesion or stability. The social costs of polarization, they're just not in the elite's utility function. As long as they can cheaply secure that 50.1% they need to win, the game is won, even if society is tearing itself apart.
Wow. So polarization isn't a bug in the system, it's a calculated, rational feature.
It's an instrument of power. And this is where the AI part becomes so important. The paper's comparative statics show that as persuasion costs fall,
Thanks to
AI, this convergence toward that 50-50 state happens much, much faster.
So the high cost of old school media, it wasn't stopping this from happening, it was just slowing it down. AI is the accelerator.
It takes the brake off. The incentive was always there, just latent. Now the technology makes it cheap enough to act on.
And this gets amplified by other factors too, right? Like higher stakes.
Right. Higher stakes, more patience. A forward-looking elite will invest heavily now to get society to that polarized, flexible state to save on costs later.
So with this cheap tech, elites start intervening all over the place, pushing and pulling opinion much more aggressively to hit that 50-50 benchmark.
But like you said earlier, the world is rarely just one single elite.
Yeah.
You have to bring in a rival.
Okay, and this is where it gets really, really interesting. Now we have Elite A and Elite B. They hate each other's policies, and they take turns in power.
And crucially, they both have access to the same cheap AI persuasion tools.
Which creates a huge problem.
A massive strategic conflict. Because that optimal strategy for a single elite-keeping society polarized at 50-50 for flexibility is now a giant vulnerability.
Because if Elite A leaves society at 52% support, Elite B can just waltz in, spend almost nothing, and flip it to 48%. Policy reversed.
Instantly. So Elite A's goal has to change. It's no longer about flexibility. It's about defense. It's about lock-in.
They need to create a state of public opinion that's just too expensive for their rival to bother trying to overturn.
Exactly. And this is where the paper's idea of semi-lock regions comes into play. You don't aim for 50-50 anymore. You aim for a point just outside the rival's cheap flip zone.
Can you give me a more concrete feel for that, a semi-lock region? Is that like getting to 75% support?
It depends on the cost function, but yeah, think of it like this. Let's say anything within, say, 10 points of the 50-50 mark is cheap to flip.
Okay.
Elite A, who's in power, won't stop at 55%. They'll keep spending, keep persuading until they hit maybe 65%. That 65% is a political firewall.
I see. Because for Elite B to win, they have to move public opinion 16 percentage points just to get to a majority for their side.
And that hits that steep convex part of the cost curve, it becomes prohibitively expensive.
So by building cohesion, by moving away from the polarized center, you're actually playing defense.
Yes. Competition, weirdly enough, can become a force for cohesion. It can dampen polarization because leaders are trying to deter their opponents.
And this explains those regions of inaction in the model. If you're safe inside your firewall, you do nothing. You don't need to spend any more money.
Exactly. But this stability only holds up when persuasion is still somewhat expensive.
When you can actually build a firewall that costs something to tear down.
Right. So what happens when AI gets so good that the cost of persuasion drops to almost nothing?
The firewall becomes useless.
It just disappears. If Elite A can cheaply get to 65%, then Elite B can just as cheaply flip it back to 35%. The lock-in regions just shrink and vanish.
Because deterrence is impossible when the weapons are free.
Correct. And the system just snaps back to maximum volatility. Both sides realize the game isn't about building stable walls anymore. It's about rapid, cheap flips. The value of flexibility at 50-50 becomes dominant again.
Okay, let me try to summarize that, because that's the core of it. With one elite, cheap AI always means more polarization.
Always.
With two elites, cheap AI might at first lead to cohesion for defense. But if the AI gets too cheap, it's straight back to maximum polarization because you can't defend your position anymore.
That's a perfect summary. And you also have to factor in uncertainty.
Right.
If elites are pretty sure about what their ideal policy will be in the future, they'll invest more in that cohesion in building that firewall.
But if things are unstable, if a regime change feels like it's coming,
then you see these huge spikes in polarization. That's the elites repositioning, scrambling to get public opinion ready for the next big fight. It's this incredibly dynamic system of anticipation and cost cutting.
So what we've really been talking about here is a model that connects AI, a technology, directly to these huge political outcomes. AI is lowering the cost of politics.
And it's turning public preference into something you can engineer.
A controllable variable. And the strategy completely depends on the system you're in. One ruler wants division for flexibility. Competing rulers might want cohesion for defense.
Unless the tech makes that defense impossible.
And the really big shift here, especially for a technical audience like ours, is to stop thinking about polarization as just some messy social problem.
Right.
This model frames it as a rational, optimal game theory strategy for political actors who are just trying to win under a set of constraints.
And understanding that perspective is it's vital if you want to grasp the real-world impact of these technologies.
But there is this huge piece that the model just by design leaves out. The real-world consequences.
Yes, the social costs.
The erosion of trust, political violence, the fact that a society that divided can't solve any big problems. None of that is in the elite's calculation. They're just optimizing their own narrow payoff.
Correct. And since AI is making this low-cost, polarized world easier and easier to create, the question for us, for democracy, changes completely.
It's not about if elites will use these tools.
They will. It's rational for them to do so. It's cost optimal.
So the real question is about institutional design.
Exactly. Can you design institutions, rules, regulations, maybe even technical fixes on platforms that can effectively reprice the cost of persuasion?
In other words, the new front line isn't about banning the AI. It's about finding ways to make using it for this kind of polarizing purpose expensive again.
That cost function is the new frontier for democratic stability. We have to figure out how to build in new kinds of friction, new costs, that guide this incredibly powerful, persuasive technology towards something socially useful, instead of just letting it accelerate us into a world that's permanently and strategically torn in half.
That is the challenge this paper leaves on the table for all of us.